So today I'll be sharing a personal story, something that happened to me back in 2019 when I had a run-in with the medical system in Barbados. Now, I cannot be certain if it is related to the mobbing I experienced later on in 2023, but I thought to share it just in case it is.
I can't get no sleep.
Somewhere between February and March of 2019, after separating with my daughter's father, whom I had lived with for 7 years, I moved back home to my mother's house.
Oh no! I know.
Now, I did this not only for financial reasons, but also because at that time I had a large goiter and I was advised by a doctor after some scans that I needed to have surgery soon as it was descending downward towards my rib cage. He said that time was of the essence if I was to ensure a safe and straightforward surgery, and that by waiting too long, it might get to the stage where removing the goiter meant having to navigate around my rib cage or something like that, and that the surgery would become more expensive, more complicated, risky, dangerous. And so you can imagine that for me at the time, it was very alarming to hear. And despite my ongoing financial struggles,
I'm broke, nigga, I'm broke!
I was motivated to prioritize the surgery.
Many months later.
By mid-2019, I had undergone a total thyroidectomy, and for those who don't know, a total thyroidectomy is a surgical procedure in which the entire thyroid gland is removed, and the thyroid gland is located at the base of the neck, and it is responsible for producing hormones that regulate metabolism, heart rate, temperature, energy levels, and stuff like that.
You a smart motherfucker, that's right.
So shortly after this medical procedure, I started experiencing bouts of insomnia. At first, I thought it was just post-op stress or something like that. I thought it was just post-operational stress that snowballed, and it got really bad really quickly to the point of being debilitating. I told the doctor, who was the same doctor that performed the surgery, about this insomnia and that I thought it might have been related to the thyroidectomy because it wasn't anything I experienced before having this surgery, and suddenly it became a big crippling issue afterwards. But he brushed it off and said it was probably unrelated. So I tried handling it on my own through just different prescription drugs and natural remedies like melatonin, valerian, ashwagandha, all kinds of things I tried. And some of them would work for like a day or two and then stop working. So I began wondering if the problem had to do with my thyroid medication dosage. And those of you who have to take thyroid medication know that you're taking levothyroxine, and most of the time it's in the form of something like utero. So I thought that maybe the medication wasn't absorbing properly, but again, after asking the doctor, he just didn't seem concerned. He just thought it was a small issue or that maybe I was making a big deal out of nothing. I don't know, but he just didn't seem motivated to kind of look into it. And over time, my symptoms got worse.
Duh.
Because after having a long period of not sleeping well, your body needs rest, it needs to rejuvenate, it needs to heal. If you ain't sleeping, it's not going to do those things. And so now I had additional issues along with the insomnia. Then I started developing a pressure to the base of my skull along with a burning sensation. And it was like a throbbing head pain that came sometimes with visual disturbances, mostly in my left eye, but sometimes in my right. And what sounded like and felt like pulsatile tinnitus, right? Or rain stick sound at the base of my skull. And this was accompanied by pain, which radiated down the sides of my neck.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
And I thought, I really need to ask somebody about this because it just feels like the issue might, even if it's unrelated to the thyroid surgery, it has to be something that is probably out of whack since the thyroid surgery. So at the time, I decided, okay, let me ask my endocrinologist about it. And unfortunately for me, she was confident that if the surgeon didn't think that anything was wrong, then there was nothing to look into. Eventually, when my herbal and over-the-counter medication routine stopped working, I went to the clinic. I was tired. I described everything I just told you, hoping for a referral for a CT scan or MRI or I don't know, just additional tests, maybe a second look at my thyroid medication. However, the clinic doctor was adamant that she thought it was just anxiety, and she recommended that I see yet another doctor.
I said, word.
But this time, a psychiatric doctor or psychiatrist or whatnot. So, for those who are unaware, in Barbados, the gem of the Caribbean Sea,
Sarcasm.
we only have one main psychiatric facility, which is known to treat severely mentally ill patients, among others. And consequently, that facility is known by the derogatory slang term, the mental. So I was stunned because here I am describing my symptoms, telling her that I think I need additional tests, and she telling me, no, it's probably just stress. It's probably just stress that's stopping you from sleeping. And I'm like, but the mental though? And she's like, well, don't think about the stigma. It has a clinic there and they deal with all kind of other things. Don't just think that it deals with one particular thing. Don't think about that. It's free. And I'm like, all right. At that point, I was confused, frustrated, but I was also really tired. Like, I wasn't getting any sleep. I was looking into all avenues for a solution. And I was like, all right, I will see what's going on with the psychiatrist. Like I'm saying it's not anxiety, you're saying it is anxiety. For me to really put a basis, an argument that it isn't anxiety, I would need to eliminate that as an option. That's how I was looking at it. As an INTJ, that's just how I think in general. I'm like, okay, it's frustrating to hear you just ignore everything I said and say you think it's anxiety. But if I'm to fight you or anyone else that says it's just stress, I would have need to take an avenue that eliminated that as a viable potential cause. And even by that point, I had tried so many different things to try to tackle this insomnia. I know some people might come here with this or that remedy, and maybe there's some that I didn't think about or didn't use, but I tried everything, even marijuana.
And modern problems require modern solutions.
Which, like everything else, work for 1 or 2 days and then stop working. So anyway, I took her advice. I made an appointment to visit the doctor at the clinic at the psychiatric hospital, and then I prepped for my meeting with the doctor. I even wrote out how I was planning to explain my symptoms to her. It's still now in my Google Keep, right? What I did to prepare for that meeting. I went in and I'm telling her, listen, I had insomnia for months, lasting for days at a time, noting the pressure at the base of my skull, the burning sensations, all the other things I described, everything in minute detail.
The details do matter.
And she prescribed Valium, which helped for a few days and then stopped working. Next came Seroquel, or I think another name for it is quietapine, right? And I took it, and it did help, amazingly enough, for a few days, and then stopped working. And I also realized that it kind of left me spaced out during the day, which wasn't great for me, considering that at the time I was completing my bachelor's degree and I just didn't like having a sluggish feel during the day when I had to be alert and perking and doing what I gotta do. I also want to note here as a side note that at the time I had no idea that Seroquel was an antipsychotic drug. To this day, I still wonder, is Seroquel a standard prescription for anxiety or insomnia? Anyway, eventually, I told the psychiatric doctor that I wanted to rule out it being a mechanical issue. By that point, I'm thinking, all right, I think we exhaust the fact that it could be stress or anxiety. Please write me some kind of assessment or recommendation that I can take to my endocrinologist so she can take me seriously. I'm like, listen, the issue could be that my dosage for my levothyroxine, maybe my dosage is off. Maybe there's an imbalance where I'm not absorbing the medication right. Maybe in the surgery my parathyroid glands were damaged or something, and maybe it's something else I need to be taking along with medic. I'm like, listen, it has to be something else because nothing else ain't working. And anyway, I answered to write a referral letter from my endocrinologist so I could request labs or scans. And you know, when they give you a referral letter, the thing sealed because it meant to go directly to the other doctor, right? But me, when I get home, I open the letter,
Yup.
and what I saw on it had me so perturbed because despite being abundantly clear about my symptoms, not only was she extremely vague about my actual symptoms, but then she added symptoms that I did not have, which included, and this is me reading her bottom entries on the assessment letter, which I'm going to share with you. I'm going to blot out anything that is too sensitive, like her name or anything like that. But at the very bottom, she listed hopelessness, sadness every day, paranoid ideations, and then in brackets she had from adolescence. Again, I was flabbergasted, but at the point in time, I was like, well, maybe the issue is that I was speaking about medical doctor things with a psychiatric doctor, and maybe that's just because it's what she's dealing with every day. Maybe that's just something that is automatic. I was trying to rationalize it, to be honest, at the time. I still was perturbed because the conversations I had with her were not therapy. They weren't psychiatrist things. I was strictly talking about my insomnia and things related to my insomnia, whether it is another symptom, another pain. If she did ask me if you're tired, of course you're tired because you ain't sleeping. So I was like, I don't know what she kind of construed as hopelessness or feeling sad every day or paranoid ideations. What am I paranoid about? The fact that I think that it is a mechanical issue? I was a little confused about that part. And for full transparency, I want to read the list of things she had put on the front page of her assessment. She put worsening of insomnia, decreased energy level, weight gain with decreased appetite, palpitations, sweating, periods lasting a shorter time, feeling slowed down, racing thoughts. And then after that is when she listed hopelessness, feeling sad every day, and paranoid ideations. And then right under all of that, she put the mental state examination was significant for mild psychomotor retardation, sad mood, or obsessive thoughts, and paranoid ideations. She had good insight, in close brackets. What? What the fuck?
Unacceptable!
I was so irritated. I'm like, psychomotor retardation? If there was any, which I do not believe at all there was, it would have had to be related to the cerebral. And for those who don't know, psychomotor retardation, it refers to a noticeable slowing down of a person's physical movements, thought processes, and speech. And it is most commonly observed in severe depression, but it can also occur in other mental health conditions like schizophrenia or catatonia.
You're a smart motherfucker, that's right.
So I was a little confused. I felt like, all right, listen, I gave so much detail, about the pains and the aches and all of these symptoms which weren't listed. Everything that I did have was listed really, really vaguely, plus things I didn't mention and couldn't figure out how she extracted from that. And I was disappointed.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Because I'm like, all right, well, how am I going to take that to the endocrinologist and then convince her to do additional digging into what could be the cause of the insomnia? To me, that letter just write me off one time, just at the onset. Like she just overthinking it. She's an obsessive thinker. She got paranoid ideation. I'm like, what even is the point of the psychiatrist writing that sort of thing on a document that she know I'm trying to take to the endocrinologist to get additional tests done or additional insight in the issue, which I kept saying to every doctor I believe is a mechanical issue. For all I know, it could have been cancer. For all I know, it could have been an aneurysm. I don't know. That's what doctors are there for.
Fact.
Needless to say, there was nothing more for me to be achieved by both the psychiatric doctor nor my personal endocrinologist. Now, by mid-2020, I resolved to just call and schedule an appointment with a neurologist directly, which is generally frowned upon because, doctors prefer that patients go through the proper channels, which means it would be seen as more kosher if I had been given a recommendation to visit the neurologist by a general doctor, right? Rather than me just scheduling an appointment and going there on my own, since a neurologist is a specialist, and specialists like to read the assessments and recommendations of general doctors before proceeding. So I understood how, abnormal that situation might have been by me scheduling the appointment directly without a recommendation. But at that point, I did not have much of a choice. So I went in, I explained my symptoms to the neurologist, and he did indeed write for me to get tests done. First doctor out of the whole list to do that. I was like, whew, finally, but then he proceeded to charge me $1,000.
I declare bankruptcy!
For a 20-minute consultation. I was flabbergasted, which is a common trend in my stories, right? I could not have anticipated that a consultation to explain to him the same symptoms that I explained to every other doctor, which I thought would cost something like $250.
Wrong.
Or I had to estimate the cost in my mind because, as many people would know, that doctors tend not to be too transparent with their service fees. So it was difficult for me to kind of anticipate the cost beforehand, besides making like a reasonable estimation. But I certainly did not estimate it as being $1,000, right? So I was disillusioned. I was like, well, it feels like this is just a lot of bad luck when it coming to this medical system and trying to get this long-standing issue resolved. But the tests alongside that consultation fee were astronomical. I wasn't able to afford any of them. And I'm like, what even is going on? I made up in my mind, all right, listen, I really do need to become a Google doctor. Like, I clearly need to become a Google doctor to get to the bottom of the issue on my own, because I felt drained and just tired of the constant uphill battle with the medical system, which seemed more interested in profit and hassle-free diagnoses than sitting down with me and working through how to get to the bottom of what I believed to be a rather serious medical issue. But I concluded that most doctors probably just aren't prepared to deal with more nuanced medical issues that don't have a straightforward template way to tackle them. Seeing as this problem of mine occurred immediately following my surgery, I still feel like the first doctor, the doctor that did this surgery, who I prompted multiple times at the onset, I felt if any doctor should have tried to probe into it, it should have been the one that did the surgery.
Let's cut this shit. It is directly your fault.
But he seemed not the least bit motivated to find out if the issue was indeed linked to the procedure, especially seeing as I didn't have the issue at all before the procedure. I still can't determine whether it was any iota of negligence on the part of these private or public medical professionals who make it their business to provide healthcare services. I don't know what to conclude, which is why I'm concluded that the answer is complicated. I chose then the same thing I'm choosing now, which is give them the benefit of the doubt. But I think this story, in light of what I started to experience years later in 2023, not only what I experienced, but then what I found in my research, I thought, all right, even if I can't truly verify if these things are related because they're years apart, I think to still mention it, share the story, because I might find out later on that it was related and that the men was trying to get somebody classify me as mental or schizo. And if y'all listen to my other stories about my mobbing experience from 2023 to present, we're in 2025, we're in May 2025. If y'all listen to my stories, then there's some actions I did take that could come across as mental if you don't know me. So I'm like, well, when I think back to what happened back in 2019, the men try to make sure to set the groundwork before they come out and push this thing for me.
It's possible.
I have so many questions. Like I said, I can't make any direct linkages, but I'm sharing it because if it is indeed related, just like the rest of my story, it is out there. Surveillance state.
I think the example that we see in China today is very instructive. China is a good or a bad example, depending on how you look at it. I say it's a good example because it shows us how a totalitarian regime can use psychiatry as a political weapon to discipline and torture, literally, and frighten people into submission. What's happening here in the United States seems to be following in the same footsteps of the path that's already been taken in China. There's something called the Mayak Report, a very secret report issued to law enforcement agencies in which they said, beware, anybody that's opposed to the income tax, is talking about defending the Constitution, or supported a third-party political candidate, individual freedoms are going down while government power and control is going up. And you just lay a mental ruler along that graph in your mind for the last 20 or 30, 40 years and project it into the future, and you can see where it's going. If we were to have a mandatory a mental health screening, as they like to call it, not only of all of the young people in school, but all adults and everybody, it would become a terribly effective tool in the hands of totalitarians. Because surely you could find something in everybody's questionnaire if they answer questions honestly. Have you ever had feelings of anxiety? Are you ever unhappy with what the government does? You put that in the context of what everything else that's happening in society, the growth of government, the growth of big government, the diminishing of personal freedoms, the desire to regiment the population and eliminate opposition to the political leaders. When you put it into that picture, now it takes on a very special meaning. When you look at the area of psychiatry, it becomes particularly worrisome because many people are not sensitized to the political implications of using that field. If we're not willing to challenge, and if we're already afraid that somebody's going to put this label around us, then we've already lost. There's no turning it around. The time has come for us to stand on our convictions, to know what is right, to take the risks, and stand for freedom.